This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor, welcoming Michael Vlahos. Michael at Johns Hopkins, but now we turn into our happy roles in Londinium in 90 AD. Michael is Germanicus and I am Gaius. We are philosophizing about the loss of the Republic, the rise of the Empire. It is 90 AD. Domitian is the semi-divine emperor that we do not speak of, whom we do not speak of because politics. We live in Londinium, a frontier town at the edge of the Roman Empire. The Roman army is here to secure what could be very dangerous. It's just 30 years since Boudica came through and burned down Londinium. There's the layer of ash that you build upon. However, not since then. Many of the Roman tribes have made allies in some fashion with the Roman with the Roman army. So it is not a hostile environment. However, that allows us to philosophize about the strength of the empire in toto, chiefly on the basis of these new cults in town. Mithra from the east, Isis from Egypt, and Christianity from Eastern Mediterranean, the east. These are competitive cults that I, Gaius, worry about. Germanicus doesn't worry because he describes them to me. I worry because what's wrong with Roman patriotism? What's wrong with the might of Rome? Why the complaint? Germanicus, a very good evening to you. I note that the cults celebrate some other life. For example, the Christians believe there is paradise beyond this life, beyond mortality. There is something to live for that is beyond life. That eventually, as you and I know in the time machine, will turn into the millenarianism of the 1000 AD. And here in the 21st century, assuming my role of John, it could turn into something similar to what you describe as the Church of Woke's understanding of the future, the utopian future we're working toward. Hence censorship, hence cancel culture, hence thou shalt not. Hence, a lot of the recommendations of the present government in Washington, chiefly to do with climate change. So the question to you, Germanicus, is climate change in our lives in the 21st century descriptive of what we're experiencing in these cults here in Londinium in 90 AD? They are turning away from the might of Rome for some other revelation. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Gaius. The question you ask is critical to a period of change in a larger culture area or larger kind of global system where you have a legacy of universalistic values, and that, of course, would be the Pax Romana in the time that we're living, but in the future, the Pax Americana, which implies a system of beliefs, values, moral codes, and all the rest. And when that system that was once triumphant and that everyone once yearned to join, when that system begins to stop growing or to lose its vitality and becomes segmented and exclusionary and favors one group over another, the capacity of the universalistic doctrine and its vision to bring people, all people, under its cloak and within its embrace, then things begin to straighten, and you get alternative visions that people can reach out to, and those are visions that specifically address their needs. And one of the limitations of Rome, of course, was the fact that it had limited citizenship, and that created literally a world of haves and have-nots. That was, of course, the Hellenistic world all over, in the sense that the tiny Greek elites, archontes, ran these cities throughout the Middle East, and Greek was the kina, as it was called, the coin language, but it really excluded most people, and so the appeal of Hellenism and what we call today paganism could never really take root. And one of the things that Christianity, Mithraism, especially offered was a vision of transcendence for people who otherwise had relatively miserable and very short lives. If you look at all of the wax and caustic portraits on sarcophagi that have survived beautifully because of the Egyptian climate, and you see all of these beautiful people rendered vividly as though they were almost alive. And they're all young people. They're all people in their 20s and 30s or younger, and rarely older people. And the one problem that they all had was a desire to have a sense not just of belonging in their community, but a sense of transcendence in life. And the Greco-Roman pantheon did not really offer that. And also, one of the things that Rome was very severe about was social status and place in the society. And so with a world of about 30% or to 35% of whom were slaves, they weren't even people. People who were slaves had one name, like the famous Gershon in I, Claudius, whereas Romans had three names. Roman citizens had three names: Gnaeus, Calpurnius, Piso, for example. And as a result, the starkness of people being separated into real people and then inferior people was everywhere. And one of the things that Christianity and Mithraism offered was a sense of everyone being equal in the eyes of God, and everyone having the same value in the eyes of Christ. And this was a tremendous transformative wave that became unstoppable. Mithraism did much the same in terms of creating a transcendence path, one that particularly fit the needs of soldiers. And there was, we think, a large amount of ritual cross-fertilization, cross-pollination between the two. Isis was very different, not only from Egypt. It had a more aristocratic provenance and was a true mystery cult and appealed to rich Roman women and that sort of thing. So it was a different kind of phenomenon.
I want to press you, though, at this point, Germanicus. We will continue this conversation. Climate change serves all of those purposes. It is transcendent, and it is universal in that everyone experiences climate at the same time. And yet it clearly is a disciplinary tradition, not unlike Christianity became in the Middle Ages. Rome did not offer a similar discipline other than patriotism, loyalty to Rome, a sense of place and circumstance. And the exchange was you get security and prosperity. We get obedience and patriotism. And we just have a minute here. Has that broken down to where we are? Have we broken down that bargain?
I mean, Rome's vision that made it compelling was a community vision within the Roman city-state, and that engaged everyone together, and it offered a sense of deep belonging, and had a kind of ancestor worship, which people always find compelling. But as Rome became an empire, that was all slowly lost, ebbed away. And the important thing about Christianity is that it fit the needs of real people. Right. The problem with the Church of Woke is that it does not fit the needs of regular people. It fits the needs of an elite. It's an elite-based religion. And I would look more to ISIS than I would to Mithras.
But Michael, it started with the Roman matrons, yes. It started with the elite, and then it developed over the course of these next 2,000 years. Gaius and Germanicus in Londinium, philosophizing. We will continue. But right now, at the end of the 1st century A.D., there are striking similarities with the beginning of the 2nd millennium A.D. Striking. we assume our role of Londinium, 90 A.D., the time of Domitian, the semi-divine emperor, the edge of the Roman Empire, from Britain to the Eastern Mediterranean. Michael is Germanicus, and I am Gaius, and we are discussing what we understand is a disruption in our life. We live in a city that is prosperous for these parts. A lot of Roman soldiers retire here. We have a garrison. We worry about the Briton tribes, especially that Boudica lot that came here and burned the city 30 years ago. However, recently, Gaius, myself, started to worry about the cults that have come to town that appear to be prospering, especially among the Roman elite who live here. The Roman matrons and even their husbands can be recruited, the apparatus, the officials of Roman life. The cults are various. Isis from Egypt, Mithras from the Parthian Empire, somewhere well to the east. Christianity, or this worship of the Jew Christ, once upon a time who died and ascended to heaven. All very troublesome to Gaius, because I maintain the reason Londinium is successful, the reason these Roman matrons and their husbands who go along with it are prosperous is because of the might of Rome. I ask Gaius, Germanicus frequently, what's wrong with the might of Rome? The old patriotism, where did it go? We conquered the world and are civilizing savagery, such as the Britons, who are an unruly lot. They tend to be large and they fight well. In any event, however, we are bringing what we can into the Roman army, and they're very good soldiers. So, is it necessary that we tolerate these cults? Are these cults necessary? What purpose do they serve here in Londinium? And I do not believe that these cults haven't settled on all the cities of the empire from here to Rome. Can you help me, Germanicus? Good evening.
Good evening, Gaius. We need, to some extent, and who knows how large or small that elasticity might be of accommodation, but in a sense, if not an embrace, we need to extend some sense of tolerance to these groups because of the sometimes ecstatic allegiance that they have from their adherents, and the extent to which, if we would prefer not to have them and prefer everyone to be good Romans and practice the old religion, the intensity of others' needs to be at least understood and potentially accommodated. So we know that part of what makes our soldiers good legionnaires is the vision, the values of Mithras, and the rituals and ceremonies that surround this worship. And equally, women, both of high and low station, find Isis a kind of empowering force in their lives. And this all redounds to the civic order and helps to stabilize our world. And in a sense, we're stuck with this unsatisfactory or at least uncomfortable position, in part because when the first great emperor, the god Augustus, formed the Imperium, he had Agrippa build the Pantheon as a way of demonstrating not only that Rome followed in a kind of continuity the world of the gods that was created in the East by Greeks and Alexander, but also that, subtly that Rome was now the protector of those gods within the carapace and underneath the beautiful dome of the Pantheon. There they all were, and we, Romanitas, were their guardian. And so having essentially created a framework in which other gods are accepted, it's hard for us to see any kind of cult as threatening, unless, of course, it goes against the legitimacy of Rome and the authority, the auctoritas of the imperial state. And in many ways, this is yet undecided when it comes to those who call themselves Christians. It's unclear still to us at this date, which is around 90, that Christians are a threat, but to the extent that they diverge from accepting the emperor as a kind of divine force, and that Romanitas is thus blessed or has the imprimatur of the divine. By rejecting that, they are in a sense rejecting the authority of the Roman state, and this is the issue of greatest concern right now, and one that may move the state against these Christians.
And I mentioned they make me uncomfortable because they practice turn the other cheek and forgiveness. And that certainly is not the way to maintain the Roman Empire. That is not the authority that brought us to this point of civilization. So
absolutely,
it seems sinister to Gaius living in Londinium. Let us get into the time machine here and accelerate to the 21st century with our Christian names, John and Michael. We know now that the Christian cult won out over Mithras and won out over Isis and all the other competing cults, including the old gods. It adopted, yes, it adapted, it took up the basilica, it probably borrowed immersion for baptism from Mithras, but in any event, here it is. And yet, the Church of Christ has aged and become part of the empire, part of the Redeemer nation. We even talk about the United States of America as a redeemer, which means that we folded together our religion and our state. And now it is being challenged by the Church of Woke, which believes in climate change, which certainly believes in tribal identity. So, do we accept that this is necessary, this transformation at the edge of the American empire, as we watch the world, as we accepted in 90 AD as Gaius and Germanicus, the cults? Do we accept the cults today?
The Imperium Americanum, or Pax Americana, as some like to say, is very much like the Roman imperial state in that it does not force any single religion, and it endorses only in the most general way the religious traditions that we see in our own society. But it demands, hitherto, up to this date, the American nation has demanded allegiance, that you celebrate, for example, tomorrow on the 4th of July, the birth of our nation and its glorious mission to the world to redeem humanity. This is part of what we call American exceptionalism, and many understand this American religion as a kind of civil or secular religion. It really, in many ways, goes deeper because it pervades all of our sense of civil allegiance and even identity up to now. And the Church of Woke has many of the aspects of early Christianity or mid-early Christianity in that it essentially doesn't accept the authority of the imperial religion, the old American religion, which we can call 1776. And it's created a very different understanding of birth, origins, creation, if that's something that we can throw in here, because Christianity had a vision of creation. The Romans had no vision of creation. Well, today there is the idea of a new history of America based on a very different vision of creation, 1619. And essentially the entire framework of the Church of Woke, its theology, all the way to its practice, is to replace the old American religion with
and it's not just the past. It's not just the past, Germanicus. It speaks to the indeterminate future with climate change.
Well, it does, and climate change is in many ways comparable to the early Christian vision of Judgment Day, and it demands that the old religion that had essentially led us into such wickedness, and here the actual comparison is to Islam, to that period of chaos and wickedness before the coming of Muhammad and his vision. And so this has to be cleansed and wiped away in order for us to be saved. So there is a kind of a borrowing, even an appropriation of the entire Christian concept of salvation.
I'm hearing, Gaius is hearing that Germanicus thinks this is necessary. This is the normal course of events in a successful empire. That the doubt starts with cultic behavior.
There is no doubt that the Church of Woke believes that the old religion is wicked and must be completely expunged. And in many ways, this was the vision of the original Christians, and that was their goal. And when they took power, they did expunge the old Roman religion, just as if the Church of Woke takes control of the state, it will expunge the old American religion. But that is not the sort of carved in stone course of history. This is all yet undetermined for us today in America, but it is worrisome. In fact, it's immensely, even existentially troubling that this happened before.
The moment I saw there was trouble was when I saw the news report in 2020 during the pandemic. This is in the 21st century, that youngsters, and I use the word correctly, had pulled over a statue of Ulysses Grant in San Francisco. Germanicus, Ulysses Grant.
This is an example of the need to replace everything. There may be, for the purposes of their own political maneuvering within the society, they may give the impression that only the wicked will be overthrown. But anything that is from the before times is considered to be evil unless it represents the saints, the prophets, the anointed ones who founded the movement in the first place and will lead it to the promised land.
All right, Germanicus, I want to take us to another place. I want to suggest when we come back that it's us. We're the problem. The Roman Empire is the problem. We didn't clean up ourselves enough in the first century of conquest, and we're now into a series of emperors who are untrustworthy or at least doubted. I want to suggest that when we come back. I am speaking to Germanicus, who is also Michael Vlahos, and I am Gaius, also John Batchelor. And we go back and forth 2,000 years because we started with the idea, are we now in a civil war? We could never answer that question. We pursued it for years, and flummoxed, we decided to take another bend, to look at us in Londinium philosophizing about the empire and its weakening, apparent weakening. There's no determination here, although we can get in our time machine and see that the Roman Empire transformed itself into the American Empire. When we come back, is it us? Is it our empire that's at fault? Can we correct our empire before it's transformed by the Church of Woke into another kind of sovereignty? And Michael Vlahos is here. of Johns Hopkins, but he's also Germanicus of Londinium. We are a equestrian class, to remind all of you. We're not senatorial class, although if we had the money we could buy it, but we're not going to do that because we live in Londinium at the edge of the Roman Empire in a city that doesn't yet have a wall around it because we live in the midst of trade and agriculture and export. And we're on the north side of the Thames. The south side of the Thames can get flooded when the Thames rises. So we live here. We have comfortable homes, and the Romans who have settled here do so because it's cheaper living. And Roman soldiers retire here after their 25-year service. The tribes of the Britons are generally friendly, although there's always danger. However, we're discussing what's happening to the Roman Empire because cults have arisen that are embraced by our fellow Romans and their wives. We've discussed three cults in particular: Isis, Mithras, and Christianity. There are more, but that's those three big ones. Eventually, Christianity will win out. We sort of know that because we can do a time machine. But now I want to press the case, Germanicus, that it's the Roman Empire that's at fault. The Roman Empire is pulling back from the Danube, stopping its belief that it can conquer the Germans. The Roman Empire is pulling back from the north of Britain, stopping its beliefs that those blue-faced people can be conquered, those savages. The Roman Empire is troubled by internal politics. In the 21st century, my equivalent is the American Empire is pulling back from Afghanistan despite the fact that clearly the devils are in control once we're gone. The Roman Empire the American Empire is troubled by the conduct of the Russian Empire, which is reawakened under a strongman and is provoking in the Black Sea, in the Baltic Sea, in the Levant, provoking in a fashion that says that it is not compliant or in any fashion peaceful. There is also the Chinese Empire, although it is nascent, it is ambitious. All of that suggests that here in the 21st century, it isn't the Church of Woke or its attendant belief in other virtues that is weakening the empire. The empire is weakening itself, and the cults, the Church of Woke, the climate change, the concerns about virtue, those are symptoms of a weakening empire. So, is it possible that we've reached the limits of empire and we're living through the long endings, which in Roman times meant that they moved to Constantinople and hung on for another 1,200 years, but the might of Rome dimmed all that time? Is it possible that's where we are, Germanicus?
It's not simply possible. It's highly likely. And I can give 4, perhaps 5 sort of vectors to this. And the first one is simple overextension. And the extension of Rome worked to its limits, which are basically being described from 90 AD to, say, 120. And after that, they began to retreat. And the overextension is not felt immediately, but it is felt over the course of several centuries because it is an empire that cannot be defended if things change and new threats arise. And of course, that's exactly what happened in the 3rd century when most of the empire was overrun. But it isn't just overextended. The problem is also how to extend Romanitas, that is to say the vision of the original Rome, the Roman city-state, the Roman city-state of highest virtue, civic virtue, in which Rome's power emanated in large part from the loyalty and commitment of its people, its citizens, to fight for Rome anywhere, anytime. And with the coming of the empire and the end of the republic, that essential virtue and compelling power really began to diminish and unravel fairly steadily, if not rapidly. And this is exactly what has happened in the United States. The civic virtue of the nation in arms that we saw so proudly and overwhelmingly displayed in World War II is completely gone. The military is no more than the Praetorian Guard, like regiments or tagmata, as the Byzantines called them, or legions in the service of the emperor. And they're his to command and deploy at will. So when it comes to extending the vision of Rome and its virtue, it's hard to make that extensible, which is to say, it's hard to move that outside the city-state. When Rome took over central Italy and eventually made everyone in central Italy a Roman citizen, and then was able to extend citizenship much more broadly in Italy and to the far-flung colonies across the Mediterranean, gradually it became harder to keep that sense of tight-knit national identity that it had as a city-state. And by the end of the first century, the sense of identity in Rome is really vested increasingly in the elites, the optimates. And this means that Rome is great if you're if you're either an aristocrat or, one of those well-to-do citizens like Gaius and Germanicus, for example. But an equites, let's say. But if you're a regular Roman, and we've talked about this many times, there's a high chance that you're either a slave or bound to the land, like an ordinary peasant in medieval feudal times. And this means that Rome isn't working. And the main thing about Rome that Romans prized was their virtue. And thus, when Christianity came along, the behavior of Christians seemed like an affront to Romans, because the Christians had greater virtue than the Romans and were more and showed the Romans up. And so it kind of weakened Roman authority at the core of Roman authority itself. So you have a number of things going on, and to cap them off, there is increasing restlessness among the peoples of the empire, and there is in the new ideas a sense of those uncertainties and the kind of emptiness of life for the majority of Romans. There is a solace for that. There are these cults that are offering visions that satisfy the deep needs of people who are deprived, and this puts these cults in a very powerful position to highlight the weaknesses of the empire. Now, what's interesting, if you compare that to where we are today, it's fascinating to see the woke really form the elites, and in many ways they are less like the early Christians and more like the Roman optimates in terms of the fact that they're the most rewarded group within society. And so what they seek is to reorder the world in ways that will tighten their authority. And the problem in America today is that the vast majority of Americans are more like the ordinary Romans who feel, not Roman citizens, but people who live in the Roman Empire or Romanitas, who feel left behind and who have a deep empty space in their lives and are in need of a new vision. So in some ways, the Church of Woke is not like Christianity. It's dissimilar. It is an agency for the dominant class, the class of wealth in American society. So this creates a dissonance. We know that Christianity triumphed and succeeded, but much of the reason it succeeded was due to the actual virtue of new Christians and the example they were able to set and the power of their vision. And so far, for wokeness, it is in many ways more cultic and more of a kind of a revolutionary rejection of the former American.
Well, let me give a challenge here, Germanicus. The Russians have no patience for climate change, none. The Russians have no patience for tribal identity, none. The Russians are halfway towards the might of Rome in their understanding of their role, their purpose, their mission, to protect Russia, to protect the boundaries of the empire. And they're led by a strong man who has undying sentimental faith in the Soviet Empire and would reawaken it in some fashion as his mission. I'll stay there. I won't go to the Chinese because that culture requires transformation in other ways. But with the Russians, we're looking at our adversaries who do not respect us. I think that would be a simple understatement of where we are. And and the Romans also had limits of empire demonstrated by potential adversaries who did not respect them. I named the German tribes, but the same for the Briton tribes in the north. Beyond the Briganti were the Dacians, and they did not respect the Roman power. And it reminds me of how the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, it reminds me of how other adversaries in the Middle East mock America today.
Well, as you say these things, I'm really struck by the need of the Church of Woke to renew American virtue, and this is a fascinating prospect because what it says is that although the Church of Woke is an aristocrat-centered ruling class cult, it is intended to recenter their authority, but also to recenter their mission and give it a kind of powerful momentum and ultimate goal. So in many ways, the narrative of the Church of Woke, which has set out this kind of apocalyptic vision of impending doom in terms of climate change, is almost a reflexive response to reawaken the kind of American unity through emergency, through the possibility of existential calamity, to again unify America. And overcoming climate change has all the resonance of redeeming humanity and the saving the world goals of World War I and World War II. And so in many ways, I think this is a kind of desperate move, and one of the most fascinating dimensions of the Church of Woke is that it is totally committed to renewing American dominance in the world. The current administration, for example, talking about how America is back boastfully, is an indication that there is to be no let-up in the goal of America being the exceptional nation. But in order to get us there and to overcome the deep division and the melancholy and anger within society and its deep divisions, there has to be some external emergency. And so climate change seems to be a way in which the elite can galvanize the rest of America. At least that's their
all right, but let's focus on the populares. The populares believe in Redeemer Nation. And this is also in Great Britain. So it's not unique to our culture. It's something we share with Europeans. They believe in the idea that waving the flag and sovereignty and rule of law and property, all of those things are fundamental to civilization and peace. They believe this. And because that's true, any weakening of it invites big trouble, small trouble. And I'm asking again, are we inviting the cults or are the cults weakening us? And what I think I hear you saying is that the Church of Woke is not a driver of the trouble. It's a symptom of the trouble. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. And I think this is causing me to reassess the thrust of it, because it's tremendous emphasis on the dominant driving specter of climate change really suggests that it is a response, that it has some desperation to it, and that it really seeks to find a dispensation, a kind of strategic excuse to force the populares, the majority of desperate Americans, into submission and into following its agenda, the agenda of the elite, of the woke. And in that sense, it is strong in that if it can maintain its vesting in the imperial state, it has tremendous material power. But what it does not have is the ability yet to do what it really wants to do, which is to bring the deplorables and the majority of Americans who are currently hurting into submission and into followership. And as a result, I think it has tremendous vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities may begin to...
We will explore Germanicus. We'll get back in our time machine and go from 90 AD back to the 21st century. We will continue. At the time to celebrate the Redeemer Nation, July 4th, the gift to the world by accident of a great number of men and women who sacrificed everything to dig into the wilderness for several hundred years, and here we are. Happy July 4th. Germanicus, who is Michael Vlahos, Gaius, who is John Batchelor. This is John Batchelor.